What's up, everyone? I'm Kimmi Chex. That dude right there in the Ali shirt is Adam Rank. And we're going to do a little fantasy running back chat, kind of reminiscing on the 2020 season, the hits and the misses, the good and the bad, the guys who showed up for you when you needed it most. So let's start off on a positive note, Adam Rank. Who is the biggest hit at the running back position this season? This is the guy that carried you to a fantasy championship.
Well, I hate to brag. I mean, not enough to keep me from doing it. But Derrick Henry was an absolute stud for me this season. And what's amazing is that a lot of people have recently switched to PPR or half-point PPR. And what that does is that gives you a warped view of reality where you feel that players like Derrick Henry are not going to be valuable because they don't catch the football. And I gleefully sat there in the middle of a lot of drafts and was able to scoop up Derrick Henry. As a matter of fact, in my league of record, my friend Doug DiPaolo was right in front of me at number 5. I'm sitting there at number 6. He took Clyde Edwards-Helaire at number 5. Did not take Derrick Henry. I went all the way to the championship game. I eliminated him because he did not have Derrick Henry. He ended up with like a really nice squad. And you're like, if you just had Derrick Henry, you probably would have been pushed over the top. So that was one I was really proud of. I thought, and I know the Titan fans hate me or whatnot. I don't care. I still draft your best players and I enjoy it. So you guys can flame me on social media. I've got you muted anyways. I just sat there and enjoyed Derrick Henry and just sat there and none of my business, but thank you, Derrick.
I love how humble you are, Rank. That is always the number one trait that I recognize.
My humility.
You're incredible. It's amazing. No, but in all seriousness, Derrick Henry once again was a dominant NFL fantasy running back, especially for those of us who weren't so worried about the regression chatter. I think a lot of people said he had a dominant season in 2019. There's no way he can reproduce those numbers in 2020. And then he went out and he did the dang thing. So kudos to you, Derrick Henry. All right, for my running back hit, none other than the guy with the $1 million smile. If you've ever seen the Saints flash his photo, you've seen the grill, you've seen the smile. It's none other than Alvin Kamara. And I'm still saying Alvin Kamara, even though we had a few weeks when Taysom Hill was still quarterback, because then you look at what happened to Alvin Kamara in week 16 of the season against the Vikings. He went up and had 6 rushing touchdowns. Now we may understand why that happened. It's because Drew Brees' oldest son had him in fantasy football, and that was a championship week. And then suddenly Drew Brees' son won his fantasy league. So that's a little bit suspicious. And I think you compared it to insider trading, Rank. But regardless, we saw Alvin Kamara have one of the best seasons he's ever had. He had career highs in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, receptions, total touchdowns, and fantasy points. A lot of that had to do with the fact that he was also now involved in the passing game. Michael Thomas, he missed a huge chunk of games this season, which meant Drew Brees also targeted Alvin Kamara not only as a runner, but as a pass catcher. Incredible things for the guy with $1 million smile. So even with that small stint with Taysom Hill at quarterback, he still managed to be a top fantasy running back this season. We love you, Alvin Kamara. I'm going to continue to take you, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see what's going to happen next season, because there are rumors that this could be Drew Brees' last season as a New Orleans Saints before retiring. So then that begs the question, if Taysom Hill is going to be the starting quarterback, does that mean bad things for Alvin Kamara? Another interesting kind of off-season thing that we have to take note of. What are your thoughts?
That's definitely something to pay attention to. I know we're not supposed to, because they don't want this thing to get dated. Like, oh, what if Drew Brees retires before we post this? So if that happens, sorry. But there's still going to be a question about the quarterback position for the New Orleans Saints next year, even if Drew Brees decides to return or whatever happened. It doesn't matter. I've already written the story of the best 20 moments of Drew Brees' career. I've got that in the file, so I'm already ahead of the game. The thing is with Alvin Kamara, I remember a number of times talking about how much I liked him coming into this season, and it definitely paid off. Even when you take away the grandeur of a 6-touchdown performance, he was very consistent. And I know that anybody who was in the top of the draft, and if you were sitting there at number 3 or 4, probably around number 4, and you're watching CMC, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott go off the board in front of you, you might have felt like it was a consolation prize to end up with Alvin Kamara, but I will probably guarantee you that you made it a lot further than those men and women ahead of you that were drafting those other 3 guys. So kudos to Alvin Kamara.
We love when the guys show up when we need them. All right, let's go on to a running back miss. Now, this could be a guy who just didn't perform all season long, even though you thought he was going to be great, or a guy who actually balled out and you doubted him. Who was your running back miss?
For me, it's Aaron Jones. And as much as I sit here and crow about taking Derrick Henry and not worrying about regression or anything like that, knowing that Aaron Rodgers was going to have a studly season this year, I was just not with Aaron Jones. I correctly said that he was not going to have 19 touchdowns this season, which he didn't. If I'm assuming that's correct. I didn't. I should have double checked before I said that. But you know what? He was still an effective running back, and I didn't realize that the petty party was going to extend to the running back position as well. I thought that A.J. Dillon, much like they drafted Jordan Love, they also drafted A.J. Dillon. They drafted Aaron Jones' eventual replacement. And we saw Dillon at the end of the year have a really nice game in week 16 or week 17, I think it was as well. And so I was really apprehensive about this. And this was a huge whiff for me because I know once I got into the second round, I was starting to target guys like Josh Jacobs, who was okay, Kenyon Drake, who was fine. If I would have gone with Aaron Jones, it might have been a bigger improvement for me. I know that there were people who were going in on him, so perhaps I wouldn't have been able to get him in the second round. But this was clearly one that I missed, and I'll freely admit it. I was apprehensive. I'm always a little skittish with running backs. I think once you get a stud running back right off the top, I like to look at my pass catchers second, was looking at guys like Travis Kelce. So it wasn't a complete disaster. But I do have to admit that Aaron Jones did surpass my expectations.
I love all the positivity you're giving this Green Bay Packer offense. This is very surprising. I think we need to mark this down in history.
I don't like them, but they're good.
I love it. All right, Aaron Jones went out and balled out, even though you didn't quite get on the hype train fast enough and weren't able to pick him up. But quite the season for Aaron Jones. All right, you're going to like this one because you just had to talk about the Packers, but now I get to talk about one of your guys, a guy that is on the Chicago Bears. What about David Montgomery and the season that he had?
Stop.
Now, I have him as a running back miss because he was taken, he had a 7th round ADP in 2020 drafts. He was a 28th running back selected. And I didn't even look to target him because I'm like, I'm not worried about that Chicago Bear run game. And then David Montgomery went out. And he's only one of 5 running backs with 1,000+ rushing yards this season. Now we understand that Tariq Cohen, he missed 12 games. So that means David Montgomery was there to pick up the bulk of his receptions, 45 receptions this season. He only had 25 in the 2019 season. Again, looking at his ADP being the 28th running back taken off boards and then seeing what he did this season, especially in the latter half of the season, including the fantasy playoffs. He had 20+ fantasy points in 5 straight games to end the fantasy season. This is a guy who is an incredibly dominant running back who I think is going to be moving up the draft boards quite a lot as we look ahead to drafts in 2021. So shout out to your dude in the Chicago Bears, David Montgomery. I hope this makes you very, very happy, Adam Rank.
No, I love that. I love the call, and I love the way that he was performing down the stretch. I just hope that momentum can carry into 2021. Of course, Matt Nagy is going to return, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. I know the big question is going to be what do they do at quarterback? Who is going to be the signal caller for that team in week 1? But probably more importantly, how is the offensive line going to look? Because if they can continue to rebuild and retool that offensive line and really make a commitment to running the football with David Montgomery, this could be a top 5 running back. I'm afraid, though, he's going to be overdrafted a little bit. Maybe not. I think people might be scared off because Nagy is returning. So we'll have to take a look at his ADP over the summer, see how it's going, see if people are afraid or not. But definitely somebody to keep an eye on. But I think the player, like David Montgomery, is a good football player. If he does not perform in fantasy, it is not his fault at all. He has shown the ability to be a top running back.
Look, and you see right there, a 7-point differential from the 2019 season to the 2020 fantasy season. So thank you, David Montgomery. I always like to say thank you and hype these guys up and give them their flowers because they made us have fun playing fantasy football this season. All right, we talked about the hits. We gave ourselves a miss. Now let's talk about the running back that you wish you would have picked up off waiver wires. There are a lot of guys who are available on waiver wires and were sneakily productive all season long. So who's that dude you wish you would have snagged?
Well, you know what? I got to be honest, Kim, is I was great on the waiver wires this season because I had a lot of CMC in leagues. No, I did such a great job of picking up these running backs. I had one team because I had CMC and Antonio Gibson as my top two running. Oh, Josh Jacobs too. I had to go and scramble and pick up a bunch of guys. So I'm going to talk about Jeff Wilson for a moment, because I had Jeff Wilson and Savon Ahmed and Giovanni Bernard and a bunch of players like that. But Jeff Wilson was really a standout for me, somebody that I was relying on towards the end of the season. Now, one of the most frustrating things with Kyle Shanahan and his offense is that he's never really going to endorse just one guy. It's always going to be a committee approach. I know they tried to get Raheem Mostert in there, but when Mostert went out, and I'm thinking about that, I think it was a Cowboys game where Jeff Wilson really just took over and was amazing. And he was great in week 16 as well. And I watch him run, and I know what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. And I know he's more concerned with winning than he is with my fantasy team. And I can completely understand that. But I just wish that we could guarantee Jeff Wilson 12 to 15 touches per week, because I think that this guy could be a solid RB2 flex guy moving forward as long as he gets those opportunities. I don't mind bringing somebody else. You can try. Don't try Tevin Coleman, because that's not going to work. But if Mostert is healthy, then fine. Like, the way the NFL works now is that all these guys are committee backs outside of a handful of guys like CMC and Dalvin Cook and players like that. We've already caked in the price, or baked in the price, or whatever. I would just like to see Jeff Wilson get his opportunities next year, because I think he could be a force for you in fantasy.
9 total touchdowns in 5 games with 15-plus touches in 2020. Quite the stat line, and a surprising one coming out of Jeff Wilson. All right, let's talk about the guy that I wish I would have picked up. What about Antonio Gibson, as well as J.D. McKissic? Now, I understand Antonio Gibson, there were some injury concerns. He had to play through an injury. But barring all of that, he was still the fantasy running back number 13 this season after battling through that nasty turf toe and missing 2 games. Now, he had 8 rushing touchdowns in weeks 7 through 12. That was the most amongst any fantasy running back in that stretch. Also having double-digit fantasy points in 9 games, 11 total touchdowns this season. He had a reception and a target in every single game played except for 2, which is good, because when you look at fantasy running backs, you want them to also be dual threats, guys who not only involved in the running game, but as a pass catcher as well. That's exactly what happened to the rookie Antonio Gibson this season. I think there are big things on the horizon for him in 2021, and I have a weird feeling that both him and J.D. McKissic are going to be guys who are taken off draft boards a lot earlier than expected. Am I crazy for being so in on this Washington run game, both him and J.D. McKissic?
No, not at all. You know, and you got to remember too that Antonio Gibson playing wide receiver in college and coming in and learning the running back position was exceptional. So I love him. I know that there'll be people scared. You know, there was a lot of second round misses that we had last season, but I wouldn't be daunted by that. I'm looking forward to Antonio Gibson as well. By the way, take my single, because I know a lot of people are going to ask this because we don't have the B-roll right now. So whatever. For anybody who's going to be because I know this will happen in the comments, where's James Robinson as a player to pick up? First of all, if you're watching the show, we told you to draft James Washington. So he's not a waiver wire pickup. That's why you watch us during the offseason. Listen, I'll admit it when I miss. I missed on Aaron Jones. Okay, fine. But I also hit on James Robinson. And that was a player that I said once they got rid of Leonard Fournette, that James Robinson was going to come in and ball out. And now the Jags have the number 1 overall selection. They're going to probably pick a quarterback. I'm just going to say that this offense could be very exciting. And if they sign a receiver in the offseason, I would look out for this Jags offense. And I think James Robinson is going to be great next season as well.
All right, James Robinson, from undrafted free agent to fantasy gold at the running back position. Very excited things for him in Jacksonville coming up in 2021. All right, Rank, that's all for our hits and misses at the running back position for this 2020 season. But don't worry, guys, there's still more content to consume. Go ahead and download the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast at NFL.com/podcast, or from your favorite podcast provider. It runs year-round, so you can hear myself, Adam Rank, Marcus Grant, Michael F. Fantasy Florio, all of the squad have our hot takes on reminiscing on 2021 and looking ahead to reminiscing on 2020, looking ahead to 2021. See, I'm already just looking ahead to 2021, because 2020, we all know what S show that was. But this was fun, Rank. It's always fun to see you. Also, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel down below. We got year-round content coming to you guys. Thank you so much, Rank. It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. Thanks, Kim. See you guys later.